There's a moment most people remember clearly. The first time they step off the plane in the Philippines. The warm air, the noise, the smiles, the feeling that life just got simpler. For a while, it really does feel that way. Your money goes further. People are friendly. Daily life feels lighter than it did back home. And that's why so many people assume retirement here will stay that way. But after watching people come, stay, and leave over the years, something becomes obvious. The Philippines doesn't usually break people suddenly. It breaks them slowly, through small gaps in planning that don't matter, until they all matter at once. This video isn't about fear, that it's about pattern recognition. Because the people who thrive here long-term aren't special. They just stopped treating the Philippines like an escape and started treating it like a real place where real life still happens. Almost everyone starts in what I call the fantasy phase. It's not ignorance. It's optimism. You compare prices to back home. You eat out more. You tell yourself you'll slow down later. And for months, maybe even a year, nothing goes wrong. That's the danger. Because early success creates false confidence. You assume visas will always be extendable. Healthcare will always be affordable. Relationships will always be stable. Money will always move smoothly. And slowly, without realizing it, your entire retirement plan becomes dependent on everything continuing to work perfectly. The people who struggle later didn't ignore reality. They postponed it. Visa drift is one of the most common and least talked about problems. It starts harmlessly. You arrive as a tourist. You extend. You're legal. No stress. But every extension quietly reinforces the idea that your life here is temporary. So you delay commitment. You don't register with doctors. You don't plan long-term housing. You don't build systems, because this might change. Years pass. Then one day, something does change. A rule adjustment. A requirement update. A denied extension. And suddenly, your entire life is balanced on a stamp. The expats who thrive eventually accept this truth. Stability always costs something up front, but instability costs more later. They choose clarity over flexibility. Not because they love bureaucracy, but because uncertainty is exhausting when you're older. Housing is where optimism meets reality. The Philippines has clear rules, and the rules aren't the problem. The problem is when people don't like the rules. They hear stories. They see others making it work. They assume relationships replace contracts. And for a while, it does work. Until it doesn't. The people who lose the most here aren't reckless. They're emotionally invested in arrangements that were never legally secure. The calm expats, they rent without shame. They lease without illusions. They buy only what they legally control. They understand this. Security isn't about ownership, it's about control. And control only comes from clarity. Healthcare is where fantasy planning collapses fastest. Because health emergencies don't care about your budget spreadsheet. The Philippines has excellent doctors, excellent hospitals. But retirement healthcare planning is about logistics, not headlines. Who decides for you if you can't? Who pays first? How fast can funds move? Where do you go if coverage runs out? The people who struggle medically didn't skip insurance. They skipped understanding it. They assumed affordability meant safety. The people who thrive plan for age, pre-existing conditions, long-term care, exit scenarios. They don't assume they'll always be lucky. They assume they'll eventually need help. Most financial emergencies here aren't about running out of money. They're about not being able to reach it. A card stops working. A transfer is delayed. A bank flags an account. A holiday freezes systems. If you've never experienced this abroad, it sounds minor. Until rent is due. Until medical care is needed. Until flights have to be booked immediately. The expats who stay calm in these moments built redundancy early. Multiple banks. Multiple cards. External emergency funds. They don't rely on a single system. Because systems fail, plans shouldn't. This is the quietest trap and the most damaging. Loneliness doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. You lose professional identity. You lose language fluency. You lose casual conversation. And if you don't replace those things with purpose, time becomes heavy. The expats who struggle often isolate unintentionally. The ones who thrive build structure. Not to impress anyone. Not to be local. Just to stay human. Routine, community, small responsibilities. Purpose doesn't have to be big. It just has to exist. After enough years, patterns become impossible to ignore. The expats who thrive long-term all share the same mindset. They don't expect the Philippines to save them. They don't fight the system. They don't gamble everything on one outcome. They prepare. They enjoy the Philippines, but they don't depend on it. They keep options open. They keep bridges intact. And that's why they're still here. Not because they were lucky, because they were realistic. The Philippines can be a beautiful chapter, but chapters need structure. They need margins. They need a way forward and a way out. If you're considering retirement here, don't rush. Don't panic. Just plan. The country isn't the danger. The fantasy is. And the people who thrive here don't chase paradise. They build stability, one realistic decision at a time. Before you click away, I want to say something important. Most people hear a video like this and assume the takeaway is don't retire in the Philippines. That's not what this video is saying. What it's really saying is this. The Philippines doesn't reward fantasy. It rewards preparation. And that distinction matters because it explains everything you see online. The horror stories, the regret videos, the people who quietly stay for decades, they're all reacting to the same environment, just with very different expectations. If you've watched expat content long enough, you've probably noticed something. The videos that go viral usually fall into two extremes. This place ruined my life. This is paradise for $800 a month. But real life lives in the middle, and that middle is where most people either quietly succeed or slowly get stuck. Suggested traffic works best when a video connects ideas, not emotions. So here's the pattern this video uncovered. People who fail usually build permanent lives on temporary visas, confuse affordability with stability, assume relationships replace legal structure, plan for good years, not bad ones. People who thrive usually create stability first, respect local systems instead of fighting them, keep money and options flexible, build purpose, not just comfort. Same country, same rules, very different outcomes. What this video didn't cover, on purpose, is what thriving actually looks like day to day. Not the big wins, not the Instagram moments, but the quiet routines, the mindset shifts, the decisions people don't talk about because they aren't dramatic. That's the part YouTube rarely shows you. And it's the part that decides whether someone stays 5 months or 15 years. In the next video, I'm going to show the other side of this conversation. Not cautionary tales, but the people who actually built stable lives here. Not because they were rich, not because they were lucky, but because they made a few specific decisions early that quietly protected everything else. If this video helped you think more clearly instead of more emotionally, that next one will probably matter to you too. You don't need to agree with everything here, but if you're thinking about building a life abroad or already living one, clarity matters more than optimism. If you want more grounded conversations like this, you know where to find the next video. Take care of yourself and plan like your future depends on it, because it does.